Dream in Green is a Miami-based nonprofit organization whose mission is to empower individuals, especially youth, to lead in the response to climate change and other environmental challenges that are facing South Florida. The symposium today was started through a partnership with the British Consulate General in Miami and Dream in Green. They started a new initiative to connect students in the US and the UK on the shared goal of addressing climate change and empowering those that will be most affected by this global crisis. This year's initiative identified a group of students representing Miami-Dade College through their Earth Ethics Institute and students in the UK from the University of St. Andrews and the University of Exeter to share ideas and organize the event that you are currently attending, a youth-led symposium whose theme of addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion within the climate crisis was a priority for the student leaders. There we go. So today's event, we will have our other student leader, Elena, introduce the other student leaders as well as their climate stories in just a bit. We are going to have a panel of activists that are currently working for a change. We're going to go over COP26 and what resulted from that and the summary of negotiations, as well as discussing problems and solutions to the climate crisis in breakout groups. We'll then have a sharing session, a general Q&A, our closing remarks, and an opportunity for networking and calls to action.
Hi everyone, my name is Elena. I'm from the University of Exeter and I'm studying medicine in Cornwall in the UK. I'm in my third year and I've had various research projects and studies to do with global, planetary and human health, and it's something I've been interested in for a very long time. So as Bella mentioned, we're going to be starting this symposium with a short video to introduce all of the student leaders who have been involved in organising the event, and there'll just be a little bit about their climate stories and where they're from, and most of these student leaders are also here today and will be leading the various sessions that we have planned, and Bella has gone through everything else that will be happening in the event so far, and I'd just like to say welcome to everyone and I hope you enjoy it and find it very useful and interesting.
Hi, my name's Georgie and I'm from Cornwall in the UK. Whilst the ocean has been a great carbon sink for a really long time now, climate change is causing sea temperature levels to rise and ocean acidification, which causes issues with the formation of coral and plankton.
Hi there, my name's Olivia. I'm from the UK, but I'm really interested in Borneo as a country. Climate change has impacted Borneo by increasing the risk of flooding and forest fires, and also causing loss of biodiversity, both on the land and in the sea. Climate change is also having great impacts on human health and the livelihoods of already vulnerable local people.
Hi, my name is Andrea and this is the flag of Venezuela, and this is what is happening here in my home country. Severe droughts and high temperatures that are affecting crop yields.
Hi, my name's Elena and I'm from the UK. As a result of climate change here in the UK, we're seeing an increase in sea level rise and therefore more flash flooding throughout the year.
Hi, I'm Luna. I'm from Japan, and this is what's happening. Increased flooding, houses drowning.
Hi, I'm Harris, and I'm from Orkney. This is what Orkney is doing to fight climate change, generating more electricity than we need via renewable technology. We need to be able to continue developing this technology and share it across the world to make it a more sustainable place.
I'm Charlie, I'm from Australia. But even since the 2019 and 2020 Black Summer, we've still been going through some of the worst floods, droughts and bushfires we've ever seen.
I'm Patricia and I'm from Honduras. Climate change has created drier seasons which affect most works on the country. It also has increased the amount of hurricanes.
Hi, my name is Isabella Herrera and this is my climate story. I grew up in north central Florida in a little city called Flagler Beach. Like many coastal regions in the state of Florida, Flagler Beach is built on a barrier island. I've lived and worked on Flagler Beach for most of my life, and in the past few years, it's been getting increasingly obvious that our beach has been getting smaller. Areas that were once filled with sand or dune vegetation were now being swept away by the sea as our tides got higher. And following some pretty bad hurricanes, areas that once had dunes and roadway systems looked something like this. I hope that our global leaders will finally begin to take effective and meaningful action against climate change and mitigating the effects that this will have on our planet and global society. Thank you.
So that was a little bit about all of us. I hope you enjoyed that. And before we move on to the next section, I'd just like to remind you all at the end of our event, you will receive an email with a survey to fill out, just so we can find out a bit about your guys' climate stories and what brought you guys to this symposium today, which would be amazing. And just urging you all to take as much action as you can and share the information you learned today with as many people as you can. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I think now we'll be starting to introduce some of our speakers. So I'm Charlie. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a fourth year at the University of St Andrews, and I study international relations and psychology, and I'm one of the organizers of today's events.
And hi, I'm Harry. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm also a fourth year student at St Andrews studying international relations and psychology. So we're excited to welcome you here today to join this event. The first section that we're going to go through is our climate panelists. So we've got 4 amazing panelists, and we're going to hear them speak about their climate stories. So I'll be on timekeeping for the panelists, so make sure you stick to the 15 minutes per speaker. I'll sort of give you a nudge along if we're running over time a little bit.
So if our panelists, thank you so much for being here today. We've got Veta, Domingo, Juliet, and Mahmoud. Would you mind quickly introducing yourselves, your names, your pronouns, and whereabouts you guys are from?
Yeah, I can start. Hi, I'm Domingo Cortines. I use he, him pronouns. Originally from Miami, but I actually study at the University of Chicago now, studying public policy and environmental and urban studies. I'm involved with an organization called Earth Echo International, which we'll hear about more in a little bit, but focused on ocean conservation and ocean advocacy work. So yeah, excited to be here.
Juliet, do you want to go next? I'll make the decision easy for everyone.
Yep. Hi, I'm Juliet, she, they. I'm from the University of St Andrews, and I'm with Extinction Rebellion Youth and Universities. Yeah.
And Veta?
Hi, I'm Vita, should be pronounced Veta, but it's okay, that's a long story. I'm from Montserrat. I am the founder and CEO of Fish and Fins Kids Ocean Club. My pronouns are she, her, and it's my absolute pleasure to be joining you today.
Excellent. And finally, Mahmoud?
Hi, I'm Mahmoud. My pronouns are he, him. I go to Carr Community High School. I'm representing Score Scotland, which is a charity that's focused on bringing about climate justice and racial justice in Scotland. And it's a pleasure to be here today.
Thank you all so much. So just to give you a rundown on how this part of the event will work, we'll give a little bit of introduction of all the speakers, and we'll probably go and we'll speak in the order of Juliet, then Domingo, then Vita, then Mahmoud, and Harry and I will introduce each speaker, and then they'll give us hopefully a rundown of their climate story for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then we might follow this up with some questions. So first up, let me introduce you to Juliet, who's from Extinction Rebellion and a student at the University of St Andrews. She's been doing some amazing work and recently attended COP26. So we're all very excited to hear from Juliet.
Thank you for introducing me. Sorry, give me one moment. I'm just trying to rearrange my screen. You good if I start? Yeah? Okay.
Thank you.
Apologies if I go over time. Yeah, so ableism, intersectionality, mental health, and climate change. These things intertwine so much, and yet the environmental movement is still being criticised for its lack of acknowledgement towards individual differences and experiences, the lack of support, additional access needs, and the appalling public judgment for those who cannot physically attend demonstrations. So we call for social justice as a key part of climate justice, and yet I cannot help but feel disappointed at the inherent exclusivity present. There's positivity, don't misunderstand this. And although perhaps I'm biased, positivity appears most prominent in the youth climate activism. So some of the experience I've had across the years. So we openly express our differences and experiences, showing how unique individual selves shape the youth movement and its priorities across the years, providing active recognition that climate justice involves 100% of the population. Before I go into my actual story, I'll just mention we cannot claim to push for climate and social justice if we alienate those who are different. I do not think it is a coincidence that the two climate activists that helped kick off two incredible movements, Fridays for Future and XR, are neurodivergent. Okay, so my story. I've been a youth activist since late 2016, pushing for change in the mental health sphere, advising and discussing initiatives and services, universities, researchers, and people in the government. I use this passion for social justice to reach into another area, climate justice. In 2018, I started off as quite a naive Extinction Rebellion youth activist with no real personal direction or opinion. Following their sibling by blocking roads with mass groups of youth, attending marches, and being an on-call first aider during large-scale protests. I was among those in Piccadilly Circus and Marble Arch in London in spring 2019, which saw incredible police retaliation upon Waterloo Bridge. I was also part of a group outside the Courts of Justice in the summer of 2019. But as I continued, I began growing confused as to why my sibling was no longer joining me. Surely they had not lost hope. That's kind of what I was thinking. And the answer is no. Their understanding of activism in the face of their disabilities and experience of ableism had drastically changed. Yeah, so at Reading Festival in 2019, I was with UKSCN, and I was asked to, which is the UK Student Climate Network. I was asked to give a speech, one of the independent artists stage. It forces me to think about what really is my position, as they were asking me, why am I a youth activist? Why am I doing this? So if I was to be asked, why am I doing this? Would I really have an answer full of my own independent thinking? Or would it be clouded with snippets from rallies and conferences that simply echo things I believe to be? My speech began with a reason I'd not used before when thinking about this. So it was a jab of frustration to the limitations that my siblings' disabilities were causing and the polluted London that had made them worsen. It was here, upon writing and delivering the speech, did I begin to understand that climate activism was much more than simply causing disruption and performing demonstrations. I realised it was saturated in the need for social justice and inclusivity. Going forward from that, in August 2019, I joined XR Universities. XR is an abbreviation for Extinction Rebellion. So I joined as a social media coordinator, using extensive youth presence online to prompt mass media storms and engage with international audiences. Let me tell you now, don't ever shun how much time youth spend online, because having used that to my advantage, there's so much information you can get out there, simply with a group of dedicated youth who can work Twitter and Instagram. If you want someone to flood a hashtag on a politician's like the thread, youth are great at doing that. It's brilliant. So I got to test this impact as a youth activist and with my media experience in a non-youth centered group a little bit later on. I wanted to see if that experience was the same in not just kind of youth centered groups. So I received a call from a member of Beyond Politics, and a week or two later found myself working with the group in avid discussion with some of the co-founders of XR and Valerie Brown in her London Mayor campaign. I seem to feel like I was being at kind of the heart of the movement because I recognised the importance of youth voice. I've never felt more within a tight-knit community within those 2 months, and my confidence boosted in the realisation not only was I making a change, but my work was being noticed and acknowledged as a disabled neurodivergent youth, student activist among adults, even though I was an adult at the time, especially because I was someone who would have to face the consequences of our current actions, and I actually still do. So when I headed back to XIU, I was even more motivated than before. It helped to form my three main aims from this. So democratization, decolonization, decarbonisation. Recognise the influence universities can have upon the rest of the world as hubs of research and activity, and the remarkable pace we could see success if we began acknowledging intersectionality and proving the power of youth. How does mental health fit into this, and why is youth activism so important? It's like, why am I focusing on this? So recently, I'll explain a little bit about what XR have been doing. So we've been pushing WWF's greenwashing into the public eye. So WTF WWF is a youth and Indigenous-led campaign to stop the dispossession of Indigenous communities of their land, such as in Tanzania, the Maasai community and Sangwa. We publicly oppose the policing bill that would see our freedom and right to protest. Running social debate nights on topical conversations that often end in complete hysterical laughter, and desperately flooding the internet with recognition of deathly admirable international activists, such as Sanratha in Cambodia, Jiwon in Nigeria, and Dishi Ravi in Bangalore, who have been unjustly reacted to and faced with brutality. It makes me disgusted and sick that we have to run these protests and beg for the safety of these people and the rights of freedom, and yet I've never experienced so much unity and solidarity. My mental health has both been shattered by my activism, and it's also been strengthened. It's a conflicting set of emotions that take a while to get used to, but I would never stop experiencing it. As a national group, we have such a plethora of unique ideas and differences that our ideas continue flowing and not a single idea is judged. It's so much more than simply a climate activist group. XIU is a community of friends, a support network that recognises individual experiences of injustice, and our differences are what make the climate movement successful. It's undeniable that the climate movement has an intense impact on individual mental health. Thousands of children internationally admit to experiencing what has been coined as eco-anxiety, sort of intense, frustrating urge to do something, and yet feeling helpless with the belief that our attempts are futile. These groups have recognised that and tapped into it have produced some pretty incredible work. The formation of community, a push for distinctive well-being presence that prompts regenerative culture and ensures youth activists have the opportunity to utilise the anxiety to a more positive outcome. So I wanted people within my university to experience what I had, a community of youth banding together to actually impact, make an actual impact on our futures. And eco-anxiety was prime within those university students I'd spoken to. And this seemed a perfect opportunity to show them how to utilise that anxiety. So seeing the kind of unfortunate dissolve of our Extinction Rebellion St Andrews group, a push for the experience of an appearance even of an XRU, St Andrews group. A year on, we've recently aided the organisation of a mass group of students to attend the COP26 protest. And XRU St Andrews is now a recognised group by the National XRU team and University Climate Societies. So it's been a really positive development from that. As a result of these experiences, I've met many youth who claim the climate movement has impacts on their health, began to realise how I could utilise my differences, how I could tap into and direct my fears of the future. Where I have the climate movement, I feel confident and if I belong. Yet, where it dissolves and fades, I feel hollow and anxious. But, sorry, I'm not going to glorify or martyr the climate change movement as a community which acceptance of disability and difference is intrinsically embedded within our morals, because unfortunately it isn't. During COVID, I was part of an intensely high-risk household. I could no longer attend physical events, took meeting calls, edited infographics, and filmed activist videos from my bed. I was suffering from debilitating mental health, and my high-risk sibling, who I'm incredibly close with, was stuck in a very scary self-isolating situation. And due to my autism, the processing of all of this was just carnage. So due to this time, I'm experiencing what many have been struggling with while I've been out on the streets: exclusion. As my health worsened, this exclusion even impacted my work at home. I began questioning my status as an activist because my disability was seemingly reducing my ability to be that sort of person. So back in 2018, my sibling was an intensely active XR activist. Apologies, apparently my internet connection is unstable. Working with their group, International Solidarity Network, to aid those within the Global South who've been horrendously impacted by the relentless climate disasters due to climate change. They always seem to be heading somewhere, unafraid to use their passions and differences to integrate into the movement. But as illness got more challenging, I saw their attitudes towards exiles and tensions becoming more tense. I believe one of those causes was ableism. It upset me because this is their life. Their entire degree has been shaped off the impact of this climate movement, and they were being excluded. So what did they do? They saw opportunity. They began embracing inner workings of activism. I'd seen this because armchair activism, which is what they call it, is not nearly as recognized as attending physical events. While their fellow friends had been running around London, struggling with increased police tension, they'd been silently co-authoring a book centered on climate justice, seeing the rise of Friends of the Earth Youth, among other things such as attending conferences and being recognized as an activist. But however, there are many who are not as fortunate. There are countless youth who feel helpless, unable to make a change. They cannot attend events because they're not made accessible, so their eco-anxiety is simply left to build and engulf them. We not always recognize the presence of ableism or restriction of intersectionality because the response we see already. So, for example, COP26, Friday the 15th, saw 30k youth activists fighting for their lives. Saturday saw more than triple that. But imagine the intensity of every activist who had attended, who wanted to attend, actually did. The climate movement does acknowledge the importance of mental health and intersectionality, but it's still incredibly exclusive. Climate justice is social justice, or must attend. Intersectionality must be recognized within all discussions, mental health acknowledged, and differences celebrated. We should not achieve the justice that the world needs. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Juliet. That was such a fascinating speech to hear from you. And I'm sure all of our participants loved hearing about your experiences and your insights into the importance of diversity and equity in the climate movement. I sort of just had one question for you. So I know you attended COP26 and were part of a lot of the protests that were there. Could you just tell us a little bit, like, what was the atmosphere like there on the ground, and what was the mood, particularly amongst young people?
So the first thing I say is absolutely incredible. The moment you got there, you kind of felt like you're in this intense community of people. So even though it can have the possibility to be it's a very concerning situation. Like there's hundreds of people, well, thousands of people gathering together to try and stop the destruction of our world, pretty much. And yet everyone was kind of there. We had samba bands. We were dancing around, cheering, supporting each other. Yeah, no, it was a very positive experience, and it really kind of lifted the mood of kind of what we were trying to achieve, and you really thought that we could possibly have a sort of this could actually go the way we wanted it to, if given kind of the amount of people that turned up and things like that. So they kind of had this hope around us. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was fantastic to hear from you. Yeah, I think we'll move on to hear from our next speaker.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Charlie and Juliet. So our next speaker is going to be Domingo. Domingo is a student at the University of Chicago, where he's dual majoring, I believe, in public policy and environmental and urban studies. Domingo is originally from Miami, and he serves as a youth leader for the Council of Earth Echo International, and he's taught lessons in labs to over 500 elementary and middle school students on climate crisis and water conservation. Currently, Domingo is working on a 30x30 movement to protect 30% of our oceans by 2030 through education initiatives and policy advocacy. Thank you so much for joining us, Domingo. Could you tell us about yourself and your sort of story and the initiatives that you're part of?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, everyone. I just want to say that it's so great to be here, and I'm really grateful for all of you to being here and for your interest. Like Harry said, my name is Domingo Cortines. I'm originally from Miami, so born and raised there, and I grew up really close to the ocean, and more specifically, the ocean's problems have always been part of my life. So, for example, living in Miami, there were a couple of odd things that I just thought were completely normal. One of those things was kayaking down the street that I grew up. When monthly king tide floods happened, all my friends did it. I thought it was completely normal. And I never really saw anything wrong with why that might be happening. But as I grew up and I started learning more about the climate crisis, I realized that this was part of actually a really big problem, and that I wanted to be part of the solution. This realization sort of led me to an organization called Earth Echo International. It's a nonprofit founded by the grandchildren of the legendary explorer Jacques Cousteau, He's a well-known explorer and documentarian who made a lot of ocean conservation films. If you don't know him, your parents definitely do. But the organization is really dedicated to building a global movement focused on engaging youth people in ocean conservation and just spreading environmental education efforts throughout the globe. I jumped headfirst into this world, really eager to start. So I started as an ambassador for Earth Echo International, going to local schools in Miami, and just teaching over 500 kids about the climate crisis and water conservation. One of the really cool activities was just bringing water quality samples and just having the kids test the water quality of their local oceans right in the classroom. And it's a really great experience. I highly recommend teaching to anyone who has a slight interest in it. Kids are so inspiring and they're really passionate about environmental issues and they really just want to be part of the solution. It's a great base to get a lot of impact in. And I think sometimes it's this type of grassroots action that can really have the biggest type impact in a local community. I now serve on the Youth Leadership Council for Earth Echo International, and I also chair the Education and Outreach Committee. So we're now focused on advocating for the 30 by 30 movement. It's a movement dedicated to creating marine protected areas for 30% of our oceans by 2030. So currently only about 2% of the ocean has significant protection from harmful extractive practices. So creating these marine protected areas, which are these regions which are closely managed to prevent extractive practices like overfishing, can be really, really impactful to the global ecosystem. Obviously, this is a huge task, but here at Earth Echo, we're doing some direct policy advocacy and also just creating small scale ripple effects through community-led education events where we have local youth engage their communities and teach their neighbors more about the need for the 30 by 30 movement and ocean conservation. Obviously with the pandemic, in-person events weren't happening, but we started hosting virtual youth leadership summits, which is why I'm so excited for meetings like this, where we can include youth from around the world and try to build a community of global activists who are really interested in the protection of 30% of our waters. So yeah, we're really focused now on pushing the 30 by 30 movement through education and advocacy campaigns, youth engagement and ocean policy, but also habitat and marine restoration efforts. But even if you live in a landlocked area or you're far from a marine protected area, you are still directly affected by the ocean. The ocean can really impact global ecosystems, and ultimately any damage to the oceans can negatively impact human health. I mean, if you just imagine the food system with fish, animals eat fish, humans eat fish, and any pollutants or plastics within them can be passed throughout the trophic levels. So there's a real interconnectedness in ocean conservation. And for that reason, a healthy ocean is good for our economy, our communities. Every single person living on our planet, landlocked or not, will benefit from a healthy ocean. But right now, the ocean and more broadly, our planet is really facing a climate emergency. The ocean is quite literally taking the heat from the climate. So I think so far it's absorbed over 90% of the heat and a third of our carbon emissions. So a lot of these problems are being directed towards the ocean. And we're seeing these large scale ramifications throughout the world. So in Florida, we're seeing stronger storms and hurricanes, ocean acidification, beach erosion, and also rampant algae blooms. So these are not some theoretical problems, they're actually happening in local communities like mine. But the ocean is not just a victim of climate change. It can also be a powerful source of solutions. It can reduce greenhouse gas emissions with offshore wind or tidal energy. And the ocean also has a multitude of blue carbon ecosystems, things like mangroves, coral reefs, that can really help limit not only the impact of storms and coastal erosion, but also provide habitats for marine wildlife and fisheries, which obviously has, an economic benefit as well. And also the ocean, when given the chance, can really recover at a remarkable rate, which is why I think the 30 by 30 movement really provides us with a really cool opportunity where we can decrease the amount of stress the ocean is facing and just give it the time to recover. Scientists know that healthy ocean is way, way better to adapt to the effects of climate change. So creating these marine protected areas can really just create a more resilient world overall. The work is really engaging and inspiring, and I encourage really anyone who's interested in ocean conservation or ocean policy work to just jump right in, even if you don't know where to start. Like I did when I first started out. Look online, there are more and more organizations every single year who are dedicated to solving these issues. And they're really looking for strong-minded youth advocates and activists who just want to change the world. Also to Loki, shout out Earth Echo, join one of our programs. We host quarterly youth leadership summits. We have both an ambassador and a youth leadership program. So if you're looking to get involved in ocean conservation, Earth Echo International is also a great place to start. But yeah, ocean conservation is really cool. I really encourage anyone who's interested just to try to get involved. But with that, I'll wrap up my little talk. So thank you guys so much for your time and your interest.
Amazing, Domingo. So I'm going to ask you some questions now just about sort of the work you've done and what you think is important. So that's amazing to hear. And so as a group, Earth Echo has taught a lot of classes and youth about climate crisis and water conservation. So why do you think this sort of it's so important to run grassroots programs? And so what are the advantages of doing that opposed to sort of big multinational organizations?
Yeah, I think when you start with grassroots programs, you really start at the root of the problem or at the root of people who care. And I think people should always be the focus of any policy or any action. And so when you're doing things like education work, you're really engaging a core group of people who are actively involved, actively impacted by these problems. And it's just really, really important to include that voice in whatever action you're taking. So yeah, education is also a great way. It's also really fun. So yeah, grassroots for the win.
And so do you feel you've been able to make an impact on the communities that you've grown up in? Have you noticed a shift in sort of how the community you grew up in Miami has changed its ways and its awareness of climate change? And sort of you talk me through those changes that you've noticed and the places you've worked in as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think definitely the youth are always more and more involved in the environmental movement, and cities overall are also just starting to catch on into the movement. City of Miami Beach declared a climate emergency, I think, a year or two ago. So governments are actually also starting to get more involved. I don't want to take credit for any of that, obviously, but a lot of youth-led action is taking place. There's a great organization called the Clio Institute in Miami, and they've been doing youth engagement with some of these governments and leading cities to actually declare a formal climate emergency. So I know they have helped with the city of Miami Beach do that. So youth action can really be impactful.
Amazing. And so again, we're talking about youth activism and getting youth involved. What was the sort of spark point for you? What made you decide one day to sort of dedicate a big chunk of your life to essentially amazing volunteer work to sort of try and save the planet? What was that moment for you, and how do you try and recreate that for new youths that you can come in contact with?
Yeah, for sure. So I think probably it'd be Hurricane Irma. This was sort of my first, conscious hurricanes. I'd grown up evacuating from hurricanes throughout my life, but Hurricane Irma was the first one where, it was coming straight towards Miami originally. I had to evacuate. It was a pretty scary moment, just leaving my home, trying to think about like maybe that'd be the last time I'd see my home. It was just a scary thought. So just, cuddling and not cuddling, isolating in like a hotel with my family. It was just very nerve-wracking and scary. And I started to realize that the climate crisis had a role in this. The warm waters in between Cuba and Florida are particularly warm. And so when Hurricane Irma went back down to a Category 1, it actually rebounded due to those warm waters to a Category 3. So we're seeing a direct impact in the current day. So I think that moment really pushed me to start getting involved in the environmental movement. And that's how I ended up joining Earth Echo.
Amazing. And as a sort of an up and coming youth leader, where do you sort of see yourself going? I see you do environmental and urban studies. Where do you sort of see yourself in the future? And do you want to continue this fight on into your working professional life? And sort of how would you go about doing that?
Yeah, I definitely want to be involved in the environmental movement, but there's so much that you can do as a green career. I'm really interested in environmental policy work, but also just like urban development type stuff. So helping cities build resilience, that's always been a passion of mine. So hopefully somewhere in the intersection between policy and resilience work. Also interested in law. We'll see where it goes. There's really a multitude of things, and I think as long as I'm involved in the environmental movement, I'll be happy doing whatever I end up doing.
Domingo, you've been absolutely amazing. So I think thank you so much for joining us, and we'll move on to the next speaker. So thank you so much, Domingo.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. It was fantastic to hear from you, Domingo. So now we're going to be hearing from Vita Wade, who's an award-winning Caribbean-based ocean advocate, recognized by the Ocean Awards 2020 as a leader on marine conservation issues within the Caribbean through her not-for-profit work and organization Fish and Fins. Vita is an equitable blue economy consultant and thought leader whose vision is to enable inclusive growth in the capacity, diversity, capability, and resilience of small island communities and territories. Her work supports the design and implementation of projects that place innovation, community well-being, and climate resilience at their core. So thank you so much for being with us today, Vita, and we can't wait to hear about your climate story.
Hello, greetings from Montserrat, the island I'm speaking to you from today, and I'm so happy to be a part of this. Really interesting to hear everybody's stories so far. I'm going to quickly share my screen so that you can watch a video, first of all, that will help to place you a little bit in terms of the work that I do with Fish and Fins, which is a non-profit that I started on the island of Montserrat with zero money, really had nothing. And we teach children and young people here to swim, snorkel, and get involved in marine science and advocacy work. So I want to just show you this quick video of the work if I can. Let's see if that works. If Barbara, if you're listening, I don't know if I'm able to do that. But I'm going to give it a go. Let's go.
It's rebuilding time. All one's presence abroad. Leave home. Somebody go run me away from the country. Yeah, we go step to the kingdom come. Sometimes we came and rumble. Just now I said, but paradise will settle down again. I love every hill and gully, every drop, stream and valley. She's still right there for the city, but so nice, nice, nice.
Okay, did you get a chance to see that? I hope so. Yeah, so on Montserrat, we run this program, and it's been incredible. Over the past, say, 5 or 6 years, we've introduced over 2,000 children and young people on the island of Montserrat and also on the island of Barbuda to the ocean space. And I'm going to just quickly run through a presentation of 2 slides to really give you more of an insight on the work and the story. Hold on one second. Sorry, guys. Okay. Here we are. So let's start right here. So first of all, Montserrat, what are the challenges? And the challenges for us here is our size and natural disaster. We have like 4,500 people on the tiny island of Montserrat and over 25 years of active volcanic activity. We've also been affected by natural disaster even before so. I was and experienced a Category 5 hurricane, and from the volcano, I was also voluntarily evacuated to the United Kingdom where I did my studies. We have an aging population, we have a lack of economic progress, all resulting because of the sort of unique circumstances of our island in the territories, because Montserrat is also a UK overseas territory. And we have a migrating youth as well who are leaving the island to the US, the UK, and elsewhere to seek better opportunities, especially within education and employment. And we have a public health care and education and culture that are all endangered. And that's a photo here of the volcanic disaster at its peak around 1997. So other challenges within Montserrat and also in the Caribbean is, of course, colonialism. And of course, we know that sugar revolutionized the European society, then became trade with Africa, which birthed this truly global capitalist economy that put people, profit over people and our planet. And still there are many remnants of colonialism in the Caribbean that is creating some real serious challenges around our climate action and the environmental movement. So what's our climate reality on Montserrat? And I would say we're experiencing here right up to now with droughts. We have an extended dry season this year, which meant that we haven't seen enough food on the market like tomatoes, lettuce, and cucumbers, things like that. Farmers have, in some places, given up their farming practices because it's been too expensive to run water and irrigation services on their farms. And then, of course, a lot of our food is imported. Food comes in from another island, the boat breaks down from the other island, and even more so, we are in a situation where we are now seeing reduced amount of fresh foods and vegetables on the island, which sounds crazy for a tropical island, but it is the reality. So cost of imports are skyrocketing. 90% of what we have on the island is imported, whether or not it's supplies for development to food and basic supplies and other goods like that. We're dependent on fossil fuels still, and yet it is still very easy to distance ourselves from the issues on the island. Montserrat, as many other Caribbean islands, but Montserrat in particular is very clean, it's pretty, and to the average person that doesn't know about life below water, it doesn't seem like anything is really wrong. So if you avoid the news, etc., it can be easy to just to not care. Now, for the youth perspectives on our program, these are some of the young people that are in our program. And, you know, when asked about, you know, their perspectives on climate action and even today's topic, some of the feedback that they gave and wanted to share was we're stagnant as an island, as a region. There's no one left to talk, no one that will listen. We live on a small island and there's nothing much that we can do besides protesting. And there's a handful of people that try but get resistance and are laughed at. The island is too small, so people don't want to be laughed at on Facebook or any social media. That's the last thing that any kid wants. And who's going to affect the change? Innovation in the government civil servants is there amongst young people, but it's being resisted. And the overall thought is that we have nothing else to lose. So those in power and authority, they might as well give us a try and give new ideas a try so that we can flourish. Now, around solutions, really, at Fish and Fins, we've attempted to be as inclusive and as community integrating as possible, working with everyone from the local fishing community to the churches to the government, you know, schools, etc. Now, from our grouping, some of the solutions that have been suggested is regional collaboration would be great to get more youth involved, but that requires a lot of organization, and as youth, that's harder to do. Now, on Montserrat in the Caribbean, there's also not much of a protest culture, like how, for instance, there's so much happening with your organizations there, Extinction Rebellion especially, that I'm aware of. Now, protests by teachers, for example, who wanted to have better working conditions or for the legalization of marijuana on the islands, that wasn't taken seriously, quickly stamped out, and people again were laughed at. So we need support. Young people, youth perspectives from the Caribbean are saying we need support, we need mentorship for ideas and support for regional action. And I was really impressed by one of the earlier advocates in your group who mentioned that she's not from Borneo, but she's really interested about the island and advocating its cause. And I really believe wholeheartedly that collaboration outside of borders is what's really necessary at this point. And it's very much the reason why we've been able to even keep going at Fish and Fins and to for me to even be here to speak to you today is through international collaborations and support. So that's something we certainly need to get going and continue to have going. Now, other solutions are around finance. And again, first, most people need to get interested. And that's why for Fish and Fins, we are getting young people excited about the sea. Crazily enough, the Caribbean, most people don't know how to swim. I grew up on the islands. I didn't even know turtles were in my backyard. I didn't know there was coral reef in my backyard. And it sounds absolutely insane. And it's part of the reason why I started to do this work, is because more people need to know what we have in our ocean backyard, how it's being threatened, and how it actually connects the dot to our livelihoods and our lives. So once we get people excited and interested, then I think that's a really big step forward for us, especially here in the Caribbean and the overseas territories. Now, in the US and the UK, it's easy to do these things, or easier, because there are already various organizations and even societies in schools that fight for these causes, environmental societies, refugee crisis societies, etc. And also another reason, which is giving life to the amazing work that you are all doing. But in the Caribbean and on my island, there's really none of that. Besides the programs like what we run at Fish and Fins, people feel that they can make a difference because there is much more support when they're in a more organized and group setting, as your living experiences of. Nothing like this is happening at school or in the colleges here. Again, this is important, why the work that we're doing here is so important. Plus, the overseas society groups have funding through membership costs and support from schools and their university establishments. So when you're organizing your events and protests, it doesn't really come at much cost to the individual. Now, even though our circumstances and our reality is very, of course, anxiety inducing. I heard, who was it? The earlier speakers talk about from Extinction Rebellion, who spoke about anxieties, and that's something that too I struggle with, incredibly so, and it's pretty intense at times. But still, I'm believing in hope, and I think it's just what we have to do. What the alternative is just doesn't even bear thinking about. But for me, I see hope. I really do see hope in my island. I see hope for the region. I see hope for this island as a refuge, because despite the fact that we have been through so much, we have probably learned more of resilience than many other islands. We are probably more infrastructurally fit for resilience than many other islands. So we have a lot of work to do, and I believe that there is a space to nurture and test new ideas and innovations in small island environments, just like Montserrat. And oftentimes I really dream and I reimagine what it would be like for Montserrat in the year 2050 or 2035. This is one of the doodles I made when I was just sitting down thinking about these things. Now, solidarity and justice, I think, is going to really get us through. Creating for each other, where there are resources to create and invest for each other, then we need to do that. To cross-pollinate ideas and share resources and really try to even volunteer support where we can. I believe economically empowering our youth in the Caribbean is very important, and that's why I'm really a big advocate for putting resources in the hands of youth. Money resources, bigger grants, bigger projects, of course with the relevant support structures to support them, but making sure that the really great work that you're all doing is compensated, and it's especially important in small island communities when people are perhaps dissuaded as well from involving themselves in environmental and ocean climate work because it doesn't pay, or they feel it does not pay, and their families require them to go out and make a living and start to earn on their own, because economically things are hard. Now, on Montserrat, we were 100% funded from the European Union for installing just about 1,000 kilowatt electricity via solar. So we're about 14% of annual energy generation now by solar. In order to get to 100%, which is our island's goal for 2050, we need more funding to get our geothermal energy plant up and running and the rest of the research work done. The UK kind of has left us in limbo with that for different reasons. I myself am not sure or understand. But this is a sort of climate justice issue to me, because if we are able to reduce our energy costs and to be more green and efficient, not only are we helping within the global goals, but we're also freeing up capital for education, for healthcare, for infrastructure, and much needed support for social services and also for food security. You know, education is again a big part of this, and in many ways the Caribbean education systems are still stuck in a colonial and very traditional path. So we need schools for the future, and this is going to be a really big task, as curriculums have to be redesigned and financing needs to be put in place and space for innovation needs to be put in place. And at the moment there's no space and resource for innovation. And finally, you know, equity, empathy, and the blue economy is where I find myself at this intersection right now, because I believe that in all my work in trying to encourage kids to swim and snorkel and get excited about the coral reef and do beach cleanups and all these things, nothing really changes unless our young people start to connect the dots to how this and their families and our community in general recognize that this is a pathway for economic development, economic well-being, for greater opportunities for our infrastructure and for our young people and our community going forward. So I believe providing policy space is really important. I don't really work, but within my work, I am a member of advisory council to the government's Conservation and Environmental Act and other things like that. But I think we need to be more vocal and to really get involved in the sort of policy and politics space. It was interesting to hear somebody mention their interest in that too. And a climate policy should really allow for accessible finance. At the moment in the Caribbean islands and small island developing states, the finance is not accessible, it's not sustainable, it's not inclusive, really. And sometimes it feels like our leaders are scared to talk about it because they don't want to bite the hands that are feeding them, because we are, of course, dependent on aid to survive in these small island developing states like Montserrat. So how do you sort of like get really aggressive with your leaders if they're the ones that are going to decide whether or not you are economically able to cope this year? But some of the things I see are necessary is like climate advisors, climate finance experts, a blue economy or a climate trust to be able to move money, because the money actually that is being raised or being accessed needs to not be stuck within government, but get to the grassroots, get to the community level, get to the people who are really making the difference, get to supporting young people so that they can formulate organizations like yours. And I think one of the short to medium time projects that can work well within the Caribbean that I'm seeing that the Barbados have actually done is having a future program. Say, for instance, on Montserrat's example, we can have a future Montserrat program. Select 10 brilliant young people under 35 to address the cabinet's challenges around climate inclusive, and incorporating their personal development, rotating the cohort, and paying a good salary, £2,500 per month. Over 1 year, to see that these ideas have space to grow, to thrive, and to bring about the difference and the progress that we need in these islands. So I think voting for political representatives is so incredibly crucial, representatives that are committed to climate action, and for us ourselves, for you too, to get involved in politics where you can. And I think things have become so drastic for us, especially after the disappointments around COP26, which I'm not surprised by, but it's just difficult to take on board that we just don't have enough time, and the commitments are not large enough, and the monies are not coming to the region and to the organizations that need them the most. And I'm feeling it too, because I'm running an organization that is not capital rich. So we I believe right now we won't meet our sustainable development goals, not in these islands, not on Montserrat, unless alternative financing is made available that addresses the well-being of our vulnerable and our future generations. And somebody needs to go back to the table and tell the UK government and the rest of the world that we can't do it. We just can't do it unless we go right back and we get the monies to help. Otherwise, by 2030, 2050, we're just not achieving these goals. Finally, I wanted to end with this, which is from a poet, an Australian poet and novelist, Raina Maria Rilke, if I pronounced that right. But live your circles. You live your life in widening circles that spread across the world. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. And I think that's a quote that I think we all do well within this movement if we took to heart and collaborated more with each other. So thank you so much for that. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Vita. That was amazing and so inspiring to hear about the work that you've done and everything that's been involved, especially in your Fish and Fins Kids program. I guess one question I had, you've talked about all of these inequalities that are being faced by Montserrat to do with like history, financing, government, all of these issues. And so from where we are on the other side of the world, what do you think we as individuals, or even working within organizations in the UK and the US, what actions can we be taking to best help small island communities such as Montserrat?
I think not forgetting, not keeping us in your mind, remembering that the world needs the ocean. The ocean is playing an incredibly big part in our solutions towards climate action. For the territories like Montserrat, we're one of I think it's the 5th largest marine estate in the world. So 90%, over 90% of the biodiversity in the UK is in the territories. So don't forget us in your advocacy. We need to join hands in this. And also, I think it's also important to share resources. Collaborate, reach out to organizations that you think you can support. If you have extra people or resources in your team, reach out to not just my organization, there's others around too in the region that need your support. It could be just helping on social media. It could just be doing some videos, editing some videos. One of the international volunteers from Spain on my program, he still sort of helps with videos. So we've got content and he will just like send me the content and I'll try and pull it together for you. So there's some practical things that you can do. Yeah, I think it's really about collaboration and recognizing that we're all in this together, and you don't have to be, if you're landlocked and you're not near to the sea, doesn't matter. You can still help a community that is in the front line, which this year we don't even know how we're going to make it through for next year's hurricane season. You know what I mean?
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I think that's a really important message. We can't forget. We can't be insular and narrow-minded, and especially when analysing the climate crisis. And it is so important that we share our resources, especially with everyone around the world.
And I also,
oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I would say one more thing, and it was around the 30-30 movement, and I have concerns about the 30-30 movement, and I wanted to share this because I want you to also understand that as we aim to protect 30% of the world's oceans by 2030, we have to consider the other side of the picture, the people that are maybe displaced from their employment. What's going to happen to the fishers and who are already under pressure from climate and fish going elsewhere, so small-scale fishers? And how are we going to manage? Are the people in the territories, in the small island states and coastal communities going to be able to manage the resources? Are they going to sustainably finance the operation to enforce these marine protected areas? So again, it's important to think about the equity and the justice piece behind this, especially for small island communities, small island developing states. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vita. It's brilliant to hear from you.
That was amazing and really enlightening and eye-opening. So thank you so much for that. So our final speaker is the embodiment of youth. Mahmood is a 4th-year student in Edinburgh. However, unlike Charlie and I, he's a 4th-year student in secondary school, not university. So Mahmood is a representative for Score Scotland, and he is passionate about climate justice and bringing about racial equality in the climate change debate. Despite being so young, Mahmood has done several climate justice workshops at the University of Edinburgh, and has made a film about climate justice that was nominated for the Keep Scotland Beautiful award. Most recently, he's co-authored a YouthLink article about the climate justice with one of my professors, Professor Ali Watson. So welcome, Mahmood, and the floor is yours. Please tell us about yourself and sort of how you've come on this amazing journey.
Thanks for having me today. Yeah, as Harris said, I'm Mahmood. I'm 14, so I think I'm probably the youngest person here. But my parents both have a PhD in green energy, so I was probably born into a household that was quite active when it came to the environment. I've not been an activist for very long, I wouldn't say. Probably just over a year. I was first introduced by Score Scotland. So Score Scotland is a charity that works in Western Scotland. So what they do is they help deprived communities, such as Wester Hailes, which is a deprived community. They help them. They help families work together, and because racism is a problem in Scotland that is quite silent. It's a silent killer, unfortunately. So Score Scotland is one of the charities that's helping to bring this topic more to light and help the people who've been suffering from racism. Score Scotland actually introduced me to climate activism as well. I was doing my Duke of Edinburgh, and they suggested that I could do my volunteering campaigning for the climate. So I decided to do that, and it's evolved from there. So I think the first thing I did was talk. Well, that's all I did, talk. It was a small panel discussion with mainly just members of Score Scotland, and we talked about how we could work together to bring probably just local solutions to climate change, and how, you know, it's really quite simple when you think about it. It could be something as small as like reduce, reuse, recycle, you know, the 3 R's. And from there, the youth workers saw that climate was something that I was quite passionate about, and I wouldn't stop talking about. So they put me with the University of Edinburgh, and I did some climate justice workshops with them. I think it was a couple of series. We talked mostly about how climate change is something which is interlinked with how our government is quite idle when it comes to climate change. So we talked about that a lot, and yeah, I made a short film as well that addressing climate justice, because climate justice is more than just climate change, because climate change will affect mostly developing countries that don't have the wealth that they need to support themselves whenever they're hit by one of the effects of climate change. So because of that, we'll probably see an increase in refugees, and our Conservative government is really just not allowing as many refugees as they could. So that's why there's injustice and prejudice when it comes to the climate, because if we have refugees and we're not allowing them in, then we're really not doing our best when it comes to the climate. So it's what I've done is talk, and that's something which I've been trying to encourage my peers to do as well at school. So I set up a little sort of club at school, and it was Go for SET, which was Go for Sustainability, Education and Technology. So we put forward an idea to the school that maybe we could, because our school is pretty much ancient at this point. It's been like up for almost 100 years actually, so it is really old, and it's not very sustainable either. So we suggested to the school that we could build a new school. So it was a passive house design, so we'll be recycling heat, and that makes the school several times more efficient. and the school listened to us and put the idea forward to the council, which approved the idea, and now a new school is being built, which is far more environmentally friendly. And I think that's just an example, goes to show that there is power in talking and doing something as small as just talking within a group and just suggesting ideas to the people above you, and it can really change the atmosphere around you. I've been asked a lot why I campaign, and it's because it's a question that I sometimes struggle to answer, because there's not one definitive answer that I can stick with all the time. Sometimes it's because of biodiversity. I see how the biodiversity around the world is declining as a result of deforestation and the ocean levels rising and ocean acidification. That's one reason why I campaign for animals and plants, because biodiversity is something which has long been before us and will last after us, after the human era. So it's something that, as guardians of the earth, perhaps you could say, it's our responsibility to take care of the ecosystems that we live in. So I think that's the answer that I'll stick with today, of why I campaign. And something which is perhaps another reason is because I want the curriculum to change in Scotland. Our curriculum right now is pretty narrow-minded and doesn't really focus on how we can bring about solutions to climate change. So I took geography a while ago, and it was very, very, what we did about climate change was very brief and not very fulfilling and worthwhile in my eyes. So that's something which I hope to bring about a change to curriculum for schools, so that we can educate the youth, or at least Scottish youth, about how we can bring about a change to climate change. Yeah, I think since there is power in numbers and youth are all around the world, it's something that people don't really bother to talk about, and that's something which has annoyed me for quite a while. So that's why the curriculum, I think, should change, so that there is one way or another that we will be educating students all around schools in Scotland about climate change and how we can change the way we are and bring about a clean energy transition from fossil fuels to green energy. Yeah, my climate story is not as long or dramatic as everybody else's, but yeah, that's just about it for me.
Well, Mahmood, it's an amazing story, and I certainly want to thank you for speaking. I don't know about your peers, but you certainly inspired me. And prior to this talk today, I was telling people about you coming along to this, and they all said the same thing. I can't believe he's doing so much at such a young age. So I just want to say thank you, and thank you for being such an inspiration to me as an older person, but to also your peers as well. And so, sort of on that question, on that sort of idea, have you been able to sort of help mobilize your peers? Have you managed to get their attention to climate crisis? As you said, in school, you've managed to push through stuff to the council. Do you find that your peers at your age are susceptible and wanting to make a movement as well, or has it been quite a difficult battle you've had with the way you're speaking?
At first, the idealism that is in my peers is quite apparent. You can see it, but slowly through social media, my friends are learning about how we can change our ways to become more eco-friendly. So it's through social media, unfortunately, that we learn about climate, and not through school. So thanks to social media, though, we are becoming more and more active about the climate, and we are making our voices heard, and we're no longer being talked to by our teachers or being talked with. We're having meaningful conversations about how we can change the way our school works. So yeah, thankfully now, we are rolling.
Amazing. And in terms of COP26 happening in Scotland, do you think that's sort of given some energy to the youth and potentially gives more opportunities for change within the education system, as it's such a big focus in Scotland at the moment? Is it going to sort of change the way that you, your activism activities and sort of your movement and what you're looking for?
Definitely. Since it's in Scotland, COP26 is Glasgow, just next to Edinburgh. It's been quite a hot topic in school. So a lot of teachers have been talking about it and how they're trying to relate what we're learning in school to COP26. And my friends and I, we went to Glasgow and we had a protest about climate justice. It was very, very, I've never been to a protest before, so it was my first protest, and I'm glad that I did go.
Amazing. And one final question, Mahmood, and this is probably the most difficult question you get today because people ask me and I still don't know the answer, but sort of what are your plans for the future? Where do you want to go and what do you want to do? I know you're only 14, but do you have any sort of ideas of where you want to go? Because I'm sure wherever it is, it's going to be amazing and you're going to be a great leader someday.
Well, I hope that at this point, my goals seem pretty simple to me. I just want to keep doing what I'm doing, keep talking to more and more people. Despite maybe them telling me to shut up, I won't shut up, and I'll keep talking about the climate and how we can bring about change, because there is power in youth, and that's something which we should be more vocal about.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mahmood. And thank you to everyone, all of our speakers. That's sort of the end of our panel discussion. Barbara, I think, we're moving on to breakout groups or we're going straight into COP26?
We're going first to COP26, if you want to introduce.
Excellent. Okay, so everyone, you've not heard the last of me. This will be the sort of last little bit that I'll be doing, but it's my sort of privilege and honor to introduce our really special guest from the British Consulate General in Houston, Amy Spool. Amy is an energy and climate policy advisor in Houston, but also supports the British Consulate Generals in Atlanta and Miami, covering 12 states within these regions. So Amy's role are vast and varied, but currently her focus is on delivering the UK's COP26 objectives ahead and during the UK's presidency. So Amy holds a master's in climate change adaptation and mitigation from Heriot-Watt University and a Bachelor of Science in environmental geochemistry from the second best university in Scotland, Edinburgh, the University of Edinburgh. It's not quite as good as St Andrews, but it's a good university nonetheless. So thank you so much, Amy, for joining us, and please take it away.
Thank you very much for that great introduction. And thank you all for having me. I'm just trying to share my screen. What can you guys see?
Just seeing yourself at the moment.
Ah, classic. 1 second. Apologies. Yeah. Okay, well, 1 more second. My laptop is not cooperating.
It's the joys of technology. It's amazing when it works, but when it doesn't, it's an absolute disaster.
Classic.
And Amy, you sent me the presentation, so if you need me to pull it up, just let me know, but try it again.
Maybe it's something to do with my security settings. I don't know why, because usually I use Teams. So maybe Barbara, if you want to pull it up. Sorry, guys. Best of the British government.
It's not my technology challenge today. I'm glad it's someone else for once.
Yeah. Okay. Well, is it up? Here we go. Yep. That's the one. Okay. Okay. So, without any further ado, again, thank you for coming. Just a little bit of an addition to my introduction, which was great, minus the hit on Edinburgh University. So, the UK government deployed many people like myself around the world in the lead up to COP26 in many different countries with consulates to engage with countries, federal governments, cities, businesses, states to help the UK achieve their COP26 climate ambition. And so my job is really engaging with all different sectors of society to try and increase their climate ambition and reach the targets that we wanted to in our respective countries for COP26. So, I mean, from the US side, my colleagues and I were, very happy with the outcomes. And so I'm just going to give a quick brief overview of what those outcomes were. Bear with me because it's a little dry, as you can imagine, the negotiations. So I'll try and be brief. Maybe next slide, Barbara. Okay, right. So I'm sure everyone does know, but for anyone that doesn't, this is the COP president, Alok Sharma. Next to him is a quote that he made from the closing plenary of COP26, which basically sums up the conference. So yes, we didn't achieve the 1.5 degrees that we were hoping for, but we got reasonably close. So it is still achievable. And according to the IEA and their analysis, with all of the current targets that were made during COP and in the lead up to it, we're now on a 1.8 degree trajectory. So yes, not 1.5, but we're getting there. And then in the lead up to COP, the UNFCCC's findings indicated that before all the announcements at COP26, we were actually on a 2.7 degree trajectory. So there is quite a big difference there, and we are definitely at least on our way. And I think the kind of main takeaways from this COP is that we've now finalized the Paris rulebook, which is the guidelines to how we're going to implement the Paris Agreement, and we agreed the Glasgow Climate Pact. And both of these, the main aspects of these two agreements really are the things that were missing previously in holding countries and parties accountable to actually reach these targets. So that's why this was particularly important to agree and finalize those aspects of the Paris rulebook to hold countries accountable to make sure we can achieve that 1.5 degrees. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail in that, in both of those aspects in a second. But also just wanted to add that we now have 90% of the global economy covered by a net zero target. And so previously, before the UK took over the presidency 2 years ago, only 30% of the global economy was covered by net zero targets. So it was a long 2 years. Let's say I initially took this job thinking COP was going to be in 2020. So it was a bit of a slog, but I think with that, I know it's not full implementation, and a lot of parties are unhappy with the outcome. But I think I just wanted to get that across to say that, yes, we didn't quite achieve what we were hoping, but we've kind of step in the right direction at least. So Barbara, next slide, please. And that's some fun little things. If you just like click again, there you go. Sorry. Just trying to make it interesting. So the Glasgow Climate Pact. There's three main kind of takeaways from the pact. And again, like I mentioned, this is going towards how we're actually holding countries accountable. So three main aspects. First one is strengthen the targets in 2022. So the pact, basically parties agreed that they were going to come back next year and reassess and re-strengthen their 2030 targets where needed to ensure that we then reach that 1.5 degrees. So those countries that are lacking, that have kind of stopped us from reaching the 1.5 at COP26, have now all agreed to come back next year and increase their climate ambition. So again, that's one aspect of holding these countries accountable. And this is going to be driven by a yearly scientific report. So this increase in ambition, driven by a report by the UNFCCC, and an annual high-level ministerial. So the high-level climate ministers will be, meeting on a yearly basis to ensure that the targets being set are on track to actually get to 1.5. So it's not the UK has had COP26 and we're just, washed our hands and that's it. We're definitely being active presidents. So the second key takeaway from the Glasgow Climate Pact was that parties agreed to, or developed parties agreed to double their collective climate finance for adaptation for developing countries by 2025. So, as I'm sure some of you know, there's a big discrepancy between adaptation financing and mitigation financing, and that discrepancy normally impacts most vulnerable countries because those are already being impacted by climate change, and they're the ones that need to be adapting now but don't have the means. So that was another big takeaway. And then the third, which we were extremely happy about, was the language being included for the first time ever. So this was a big kind of historic event, including the phase down of coal and fossil fuel subsidies. So, which they'd never included that kind of language in there. Yes, it wasn't phase out, and I know a number of countries are disappointed in that, but the fact that we managed to have it in there at all, obviously we're going to have to go back and figure out metrics and what phase down means. But the fact that it stayed in, the UK anyway was happy with that result, because it's never happened before. So now on to the Paris rulebook. So if you just you're on it, Barbara. Okay, so three main takeaways that were finalized from the Paris rulebook, which means now the Paris Agreement can be fully implemented. First one, enhanced transparency framework. So again, like I said earlier, a lot of these are the actual key aspects that are holding parties accountable. So parties have agreed on how to track their progress in tackling climate change. So this includes a series of reportings that countries will have to do to the UNFCCC, tracking their emissions, their support to developing countries, etc. So this one was a big kind of win in the way that we can actually have keep parties accountable and maintain, so we can follow up their progress. The second is the Article 6, which basically it acknowledges, one aspect of it acknowledges that countries can cooperate internationally to meet their NDCs, so their nationally determined contributions, by using like purchasing international carbon credits and offsets. So the details of Article 6 were finalized, which has established a strict and robust framework for tracking these carbon credits to make sure they are not being doubled, which was the main kind of criticism of the international carbon trading. And then the third is establishing a common timeframe for NDCs. So this wasn't finalized previously, obviously. So countries' NDCs were all on different timelines, which makes it very difficult for them to be compared So from now moving forward, any new NDCs from countries or any updated NDCs are now being held to a common timeframe so they can be compared and tracked. And so that's like the main kind of negotiation aspect of that came out of COP26. I'm just going to very briefly go over just a couple of the additional outcomes. There were many. If any of you are watching, no, I won't blame you if you weren't. It was a lot, 2 weeks of events. And so these are some of the kind of main highlights of COP, out of not to do with the negotiations. So the G20 committing to end international coal financing by 2021. I think that was one of the big highlights under mitigation, particularly. Also, the 190 governments and organizations committing to phase out of coal power and end support for new coal plants is actually the Powering Past Coal Alliance, which was our main kind of flagship initiative under the Energy Day. We're all trying to get countries, cities, states, businesses to join unabated coal power. And actually, from my patch, I managed to get New Mexico to join the Powering Past Coal Alliance. So I was very happy with that outcome. And then the third under mitigation, I think these are just the three that I picked out. The US EU-led pledge to reduce global methane emissions, which is obviously, being a more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, is I think very important to tackle. And now we have a initiative and collaboration to do so. So that was a really fantastic announcement. So over 90% of the world's forests, leaders covering over 90% of the world's forests, have committed to halting and reversing deforestation, which is now being supported by $9 billion of public and private funds. The US in particular announced a great deal of kind of policy and legislation domestically to support this, which we were happy with. And financing was a huge aspect of this COP. So at Paris, they were set to mobilize $100 billion of climate finance to start every year in 2020 through to 2025 for developing countries. And this we have fallen behind on. So at COP, they established the delivery plan to kind of get back on track, which is vital to meeting our climate finance goals for developing countries. And then through the what we call GFANZ, which is a global alliance for net zero commitment, $130 trillion of capital, which is around 40% of global assets, have now committed to science-based net zero targets. Again, which was, I think, a huge win on our side. And the US
So it looks like we might have lost Amy there, unfortunately. So we are coming up to this sort of next time frame anyway, sort of go on to the group discussions. Unless Amy, is that you back, Amy?
No, that was just me. I'm seeing what else. Let's give her just one more second. We are working on... Yeah, she just froze. I'm not sure where she was joining us, but we'll give her a second. But just in case we're not able to get her back on. I'm looking for her right now. I'm putting her contact information up on the screen. And now, before we go to the breakout rooms, let's have a quick poll beforehand. Give me 1 second, and we're getting breakout rooms ready. It seems like we're going to be able to do the breakout rooms, thanks to Isabella. So just give me a second, and make sure that we can do this.
Barbara, I'm really sorry. My Zoom cut out and I don't know
There
when.
she is. All right. No
So
worries.
sorry. Yeah, great. This is why I shouldn't work from home. Sorry.
No worries. You were in the on the last part, talking
no worries.
about financing, I believe was the last
Okay, it was basically
you were talking about, yep, and then the only thing that we hadn't mentioned was the adaptation, about the adaptation communications or national adaptation plans.
yeah, that 95 countries are now covered by national adaptation plans, and historic 350 million was pledged to the adaptation fund, which was huge, the highest that's ever been put forward. So, sorry about that.
No problem, no problem. So Isabella, before we go on to the breakout rooms, actually, let's close rooms for right now because we want to get to we're going to close it a second, and we're going to have our next presenters kind of go through what we're going to be doing in the breakout rooms. So before we do that, here we go. I also put in the chat if everybody can see.
Yes, we can see it. Thank you, Barbara. And thank you, Amy, for such an amazing presentation and such an informative presentation. So, hi, everyone. My name is Andrea Palacios, and I'm a student at Miami-Dade College here in Miami. I'm a second year, and I'm currently a student majoring in foreign languages. And with my teammate, Patricia, and I, we're going to be presenting this section. So I want to give the opportunity to Patricia to introduce herself and share the purpose of the session.
Hello everyone, my name is Patricia Varela. I'm also a student from MDC North, majoring in biology. And the goal of these breakout rooms is to go into small groups and share our ideas on the problem presented and also think about some solutions.
Thank you, Patricia. So before we go into the breakout rooms, we want to quickly explain the responsibilities or the ground rules for the breakout rooms. So first, step up, step back, we mean to basically ask you to wait until the person that is speaking to finish before you start talking. The other one is listen actively and attentively, which in other words, please pay attention to what people are saying and commit to learning from others. We're asking you to be open-minded about learning new things from other people's opinions and ideas.
Criticize ideas, not individuals. Please don't target people for what they said. And also take responsibility for the quality of the discussion. Please be mindful of what you're sharing.
Barbara, can you go to the next slide, please, so I can read the question? Thank you. So this is the question, the general question for the breakout rooms. I'm gonna read it to you guys out loud so you can start thinking about it and maybe start organizing your idea. So the question is, do you think governments are doing enough? And if not, what else would you suggest they do?
In each breakout room, there will be one student leader, which will be guiding the conversation and also will be responsible for sharing what the group talk about on the sharing session. I think now we're ready to start the breakout rooms.
Before we go on to sharing, I just wanted to make sure that everybody had the question about how do you feel about the outcomes of COP26 that was put in the chat, and here are the answers so far. Before we go on to our next session, we'll have another one of these questions, but so far these are the words that have come into. I can send it out again. Yes, I can definitely do that. And will give me a second, and then we're gonna share the next part of our presentation. Here, give me 1 second for our next presenters here. Oops, that is not our current slide. Excuse me. There we go. I believe Stephanie and is everybody back? I just want to make sure. I think it's Stephanie.
I think
and
everybody's
Gonzalo.
back. Yes.
Okay. Right, I think it's Stephanie and Gonzalo going through these. I know you guys are in the same.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Gonzalo. I am a student here at the MDC Padron campus, business major. And this is Stephanie Davila, also studying business administration here at the MDC Honors College. And today we are going to ask some of the student leaders what their impressions were on the breakout. So if anyone would like to go first.
I'm happy to go first. So our breakout room was really interesting. We had lots of discussions about sort of where the issues lie, and I think the sentiment that came out of it was at local level, governments can be very effective, and particularly in Miami, the new mayor is particularly good at sort of climate activism and looking to sort of mitigate climate crisis. But on a global international level, there's this sort of difficulty of zero-sum games in the international system. So, one state wins, another state loses. And the difficulty of trying to get global South states to want to adopt environmentally green policies when it affects their economy. So the argument for India, for example, not giving up coal is based on the fact that they've not had the opportunity to industrialize like many Western industrialized states. So why should they not have the same opportunities that previous states have had? And the solution to that is Western states investing into these global South countries. But as I said, the international system isn't the most forgiving place. It doesn't often happen where you have white Western states, the EU, the US handing out something for nothing, and there needs to be an exchange of somehow. So the issue sort of falls when it comes to trying to elevate each other, because everyone's sort of competing against each other at the same time. So at local level, it can work very well. At the international level and sort of the wider parameters, there's still a lot to be wanted. And that was sort of what I gained from our conversation. If anyone from my group wants to chime in, you're more than welcome.
Well, it's interesting what you raised, the topic that on the local scale, it seems to have satisfied many requisites, but on the macro scale, like on the big stage, it seems to have been lacking. And I saw that one of the major words there were disappointed and frustrated with the outcomes of COP26, while others said amazing and pretty hopeful for the future. So I hope that serves to clarify why there was such a duality with the outcome.
I can go next.
Yeah, of course.
So in our group, they thought that the government wasn't doing enough, especially since in the US, recycling is not like prioritized. They also think that it's really bad that here we have to send our trash elsewhere to be processed. And that one of the things that it could be done to improve this is to incentive people to recycle, also to hold companies accountable for the trash they make. We also talk about how taking action, like conversations and taking action and raising awareness should be linked, because we cannot only talk about things, we have to take action on them.
Yeah, you're right, because we have to lead by example. And if we're talking about doing stuff and we have ideas and new solutions, we must act on it. And of course, like persuade others to follow our steps and then delegate whatever idea that we come up so future generations can continue doing that and develop it into a new project or a better like organization to develop any idea that we may have.
Exactly.
Anyone else would like to say something?
I'm happy to share next. So in our group, we had a group of people from different backgrounds, and I thought that was a really good point to take away, that we all have different backgrounds and different kind of disciplines and specialties. So we had some students from school and people leading education, and then people in the government too. And myself and Georgie studying medicine currently, it was interesting to see our different kind of priorities. And so we kind of look at things from a health perspective as well, and the impacts on health, and then everyone had different priorities, and I think that's the same for the governments too. And yeah, it was really interesting to see that kind.
Yeah, we sort of discussed a few more of the, I guess, practicalities of it, and sort of explaining the big structural issues like the infrastructure based around sort of fossil fuels and profit, and how those steps that we're making, whilst we might not feel, some people might not feel like they're enough, they are extremely significant based in sort of the history of what we're coming from. And sort of we mentioned that with our Conservative government at the moment, for them to be making these decisions is quite impressive for like in the background of what they would normally do. And then some quite nice sort of ideas that were put up. The Citizens Climate Lobby have got this plan that corporate would have to pay a fee for fossil fuels, and then this would then be paid, I think it currently is to like the citizens. We're also sort of thinking maybe pay that to the people who are actually paying the cost of this climate change and sort of remit it that way. And then there was also a disco review, which I think has been put in the chat by Amy, which looks at the economic impacts of biodiversity. So it was quite interesting looking at everything from a more economic point of view that I don't normally consider very well.
Absolutely, like tying in different ideas together.
Yeah.
To get that information across.
I'll chime in a bit quickly because I realize that we're running out of time. But yeah, just with all the points that the other student leaders have mentioned, we also talked something similar about how there's this friction between, there are these bottom-up movements from the local, at the local level where, whether that be individuals or students, being concerned about this whole climate issue, but then the regulatory environment and the government and those more top-down movements are also being opposed. And so there's this friction that's slowing down the movement. And I think it's whether it's considering which forces are stronger and whether we have the confidence to be part of that. Towards making a positive change. That's what we talked about.
Of course, positive change, that's the root where all action comes from. If anyone else would like to chime in, or? All right, well, for the sake of time, we will now give the mic to Ms. Karina Castillo. So Karina Castillo is a resilience coordinator for community engagement in the Miami-Dade County Office of Resilience. She holds a Master's of Professional Science degree in Weather, Climate, and Society from the Rosenthal School of Marine and Atmospheric Science at the University of Miami. And she also holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Meteorology and Applied Mathematics from UM as well. Karina has also worked for NOAA, or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and interned for the Miami-Dade County Office of Emergency Management. And in 2017, she made GRIS's annual list of 50 emerging green leaders known as the Fixers. And in 2016, Ford Motor Company named Karina as a mujer legendaria, as a representative of their green pillar for her work in climate and the Hispanic and Latino community. Ms. Karina has close ties and has close to a decade of extensive experience in education and engaging diverse audiences in climate change and resilience issues and experience with national climate and clean air policies. So Karina, would you like to go ahead?
Unmute myself. Hi, good afternoon, good morning, depending where you are. It's great to see so many different faces and accents on the line. So I'm really thrilled to be able to join you this morning on behalf of our Chief Resilience Officer, Jim Murley, who was unable to make it because he's with our mayor in a retreat right now. So I was asked by Barbara and Amy to kind of hit upon three main topics: the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in this movement, the role of local governments, and then also why engaging the youth is so important. So I'll try not to bore you and take up too much time, but let me start with the diversity, equity, and inclusion aspect. I hate hearing about my background, and I think a lot of us are uncomfortable when we hear about ourselves, but I think it's important because as I was going through school, I was walking into rooms where there weren't a lot of people that looked like me, and where I felt like just my culture was very different than that of my professors and of my my fellow the fellow students in my classrooms. And so I think that's not only true of like the specific track that I took, but also just in general of like science and math. There's a true lack of diversity in those fields. And so I don't know, it made me feel awkward sometimes, it made me feel uncomfortable sometimes. But I think that as you go down that path and you continue, and I grew up in Miami for most of my life, but so, in high school and middle school and elementary school, I was surrounded by people like me, but then I went to UM and the track that I studied was not like me. So I was a little bit spoiled growing up. But when I got to college, it was kind of a reality check. And like I said, it made me really uncomfortable at times, but I think just building up your confidence and understanding that, you know what you're talking about, and that you bring value to the conversation, and that your lived experience and the experience of your parents and your families are also important and hold the same value, maybe a little bit more. And so, bringing in, your lived experiences and the sacrifices that all your family have made. Most of us in Miami, our parents came from other places. And so I think that a lot of times that responsibility is, communicated clearly to us, and that we got to make the best of being in this country and the opportunities that come with it. And many hands make light work. So the more that you come to the table, make some room for yourself at the table, ask to be invited to the table, those perspectives and that lived experience is invaluable. And just, continue to challenge yourself and sharing your experiences. So, kind of shifting a little bit to, local government, which is where I've been working for the past 3.5 years in the Miami-Dade County Office of Resilience. Before that, I was in the advocacy and nonprofit world. A lot of people, I think I heard some of you talk about, your reactions to COP. And there's been some up and downs in the United States, and I'm sure in many countries around the world, about how much of a priority taking climate seriously and acting on climate is. But I can tell you that one thing that is constant in local government is that local government is always on the front lines. When there's a tree down or when there's an emergency, the residents are picking up the phone and calling their local police department or their local fire department or their mayor and saying like, there's something going on there and I don't like it. How are you going to fix it? They're not calling the state. They're not calling the federal government. And that's really important, I think, when it comes to climate action, because while, there's been varying levels of prioritization for this topic in the United States, at the local government, especially here and other places around the country, we're already seeing impacts in the form of more heat and king tide flooding, sunny day flooding. It's a priority. It doesn't matter because the commissioners and the mayor are seeing it happen. And it's us who are developing the plans that are locally relevant, that take into account local voices, and that, are trying to bring those solutions to fruition. It's not easy, it's challenging. I think Olivia mentioned to start talking a little bit about like how, even a small step, even though it's not enough, a radical change does not happen fast in local government. I can tell you that. We're not super innovative, even though, we want to be, and we know that to tackle this crisis, we have to be. But I would just say that we need to celebrate the small successes. I get frustrated, I live in this community and I do get frustrated sometimes, but, these are like monumental institutions. If at the local government, it's, in Miami-Dade County level, it's huge. I can't imagine at the federal level how much of really challenge it's going to be to kind of flip this all around. But I think for the most part, we're doing what we can. We're preparing the plans that we can. We've researched and we have, we know all of our challenges. It's just about moving forward. And that means collaborating with different municipalities, with universities, with the federal government, with the state government, and making sure, I think, that we're prioritizing both the mitigation, the removing carbon from the atmosphere, and the adaptation, which is dealing with sea level rise, dealing with heat, at least here in South Florida. I make sure I hit all my points. And, it's just a local government brings, some sort of stability. I think at the end of the day, local governments still have to serve the people that live in the community, and still have to make sure that we're maximizing people's property tax dollars and everything that they put in to make sure that the local government is servicing them. And at the end of the day, we have to lead by example. So that's where, we're going to make the real change. And then finally, I don't know how much more time I have, but I'll kind of try and make it quick. In terms of the youth, I think I was asked to kind of, reflect on why it's so important to engage the youth, and what about the youth is important. And so I would just say is that, on bad days where it's really frustrating, I just think about how we need the youth to motivate, those of us that are trying to make the changes. You guys bring really a different way and a different angle of approaching things that sometimes, I'm not that much older than you, but I think that some of the innovation and just like the fearlessness that a lot of you have is inspiring, and I think pushes us a little bit further than we are. I remember when I was at the Clio Institute, which some of you may know, we did a program. We were working with the University of Miami on a program at Booker T. Washington. It's one of the high schools here in our own community. And we were telling the students about climate change, why is it changing? How is it happening? What are the solutions? What are the challenges? And I remember we were walking around afterwards, and I stopped at one of the students' desks, and he was drawing this machine. And I was like, what are you drawing? And he said, this machine, like we can, capture carbon, recycle it, and turn it into something. And I was just like, yeah, of course. But, and I just like, we didn't ask him to draw anything, that would do this. And it was just because of, what he was learning and processing it. And in the moment, coming up with something, innovative, or, thinking outside the box. And I still to this day remember that story. That was probably about like 10 years ago. And it was just interesting. And I think that, getting a little bit of your perspective and trying to match that with what's feasible and what local government can do is exciting and challenging. And I don't know, I guess when I have one ask is to also have patience. Like I said, radical change is not going to happen overnight in local government or at the federal level. And so we just need your help and also celebrating the small successes and the small steps to get us there, even though there's urgency and there's definitely a need to kind of change the tide quickly. We also need your support and helping us celebrate the steps that we do take. So nice to be with you all. I hope you found that useful and look forward to any questions.
Oh, thank you so much, Karina. That was such an interesting and insightful. Yeah, that was really great. Thank you. So Amy, do you have any closing remarks for us? And then we'll sort of go into the Q&A quickly.
Hi, yeah, sorry. So I'm on my phone now because I've given up with my laptop. So I won't have my camera on. Yeah, there was just like a couple extra things to build on from what Karina said that was particularly focused around kind of COP, that, collaboration was one of the 4 pillars that the UK centered the conference around. So we definitely were trying to make it an inclusive process because obviously, climate change impacts, young, old, rich, poor. And so it doesn't matter, where you live or how much money you have, but really the difference there is how you're able to manage the impacts of climate change. So again, as Karina mentioned, local governments are the ones on the front line. And they're the ones that have to actually deliver the changes that are needed to kind of support communities with their climate targets. So really that's been probably about 70% of my work is working with cities. And I've had the absolute pleasure of working with Miami-Dade County and a number of the mayors from my region anyway, Houston, Austin, Miami, Miami-Dade, New Orleans. They all went to COP26 and they know the gravity of this kind of issue and they take it all very seriously. And it's just been so great to be able to work with these cities, even though these states that these cities are in are not, particularly climate progressive. Obviously, Florida, Texas, not great leaders on climate change. But the cities are really is where the kind of change has to happen. And so working with them has been such a lifeline for my work. And they're so important because they are the ones that are most impacted. And then just last thing that I didn't mention, it's kind of on youth, another initiative that did come out of COP. And this is, you'll be able to see in the negotiated outcomes, is the Action for Climate Empowerment, which is a new 10-year work program focused on advancing international education, training, access to information around climate change. And the most kind of notable thing from this was its recognition of youth as a critical agent of change. So it's encouraging governments to include youth as part of the national delegations. And the cover decision was, it was created as a permanent youth forum, following on from the Youth for Climate event held by Italy at the pre-COP. So I just wanted to mention that if any of you are interested, and just speak to the way that we're trying to incorporate youth, because obviously you are the young people or younger people are the ones that are going to have to actually follow on and implement the decisions that we make today. So I think it's vital that you're incorporated into the conversation. And just thank you so much for having me, and it's been so great to kind of hear feedback from everybody on what they thought about COP, good or bad. It's really helpful, and I'm just so happy to be here. So thanks very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, both of you, for speaking. It's been really inspiring and great to hear that it matters so much what we think as youth, and like our input is taken into account as well, because sometimes it can get a bit frustrating when you feel like you're not being heard, but it's great to feel like we're heard. So now we thought it's a good time to have some time for some questions, following on from what you guys have said.
Yeah, so with the questions, please put your hands up, anyone, if you want to speak, and then we can call on you. But also pop your questions into the chat just in case we don't have a chance to ask everyone's, and then we can put these into the website, so they'll all be featured at some point. Yeah, so does anybody have any questions to put their hands up for? Whilst you guys maybe think of them, we've got a couple of questions. So we were wondering what you thought about what effects of the climate crisis need to be addressed first, sort of where our priorities should be with this. Oh, sorry, there is a question. Yeah, is any for the keynote speakers, do you have any thoughts on that?
Go ahead, Corey. You should be unmuted.
Oh, thank you. So my question is, how do we combine, a lot of the climate question revolves around how we can engage in more sustainable practices within our own lives. So one question I want to engage is, how do we combine both employment, our necessities, and engaging with our work environment or educational environment with sustainability?
Was that just to either of us? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Anyone in particular can answer.
Well, I'll since I'm already off mute, I'll go. Yeah, that's a very good question. It's always difficult to think, how can I make a difference and really do anything towards this? But I think that was hopefully the point that at least we were trying to make at COP, that if everybody does nothing, then we're going to get nowhere. So everyone has to do at least something. Now, there are so many different things that people can do to incorporate sustainability, using public transport, walking, cycling, recycling, just not using single-use plastics. I mean, there's so many things that people could make, just small differences. And if everybody made a small difference, I think, and just a small change, then I think obviously across the whole globe, that would result in a big change. Now, I know a lot of those kind of aspects have to kind of also be driven a little bit by governments, local governments, kind of public policy. I know the question of recycling was brought up, the subject of recycling even. And, obviously if there are no facilities, then it's very difficult to recycle. And it comes back to the point that there's so many different aspects, particularly that local governments have to cover to help enable communities to be more sustainable themselves. So having cycle routes, having public transport, but obviously it's a lot on a local government to have to incorporate, because not only do you need that kind of push, because people really, they want it to be convenient, to be honest. So it's all, it's great to hear everybody's perspective here, but I would say the majority of, homeowners and general people working, their focus is on paying their mortgage, paying their loans, student loans, whatever, making sure their kids have food. So it needs to be trying to incorporate it to, I think, make it easier for people, which is very difficult, because it means people may have to change their kind of way of life, and it not be quite so convenient, which I mean it's difficult. It's a kind of a very difficult thing to kind of make people do. I don't know if that answered your question, but I'll hand it over to Karina.
Yes, that was a very good answer. Thank you.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing I'll add is that, we all have a role, right? And that can be as simple as, we all need, things, whether it be food or, AirPods or, a phone, we all need our cell phones these days, right? And I think that being wise about those choices to send messages to the companies that are making these products is really powerful. And the power of social media, by demanding that products are made more ethically, more ecologically sensible, ecologically sound and sort of thing. I mean, the big corporations are moving towards all these eco-friendly products and sort of thing. So demanding that is a role that individual can play. And then, of course, once you're old enough, be sure to register to vote and to be in touch with your local elected officials and tell them why you care about this issue. And vote in every single election. I've never missed an election since I've been able to vote, even if it's just a primary.
That's great, thank you. I think we've got time for just one more question. So Isabella, you've got your hand up. Would you like to, Isabella, your hand was up first, go ahead.
Yes, so I had a question for Karina and Amy. I was wondering, as we are student leaders just in this symposium, but just in general, like how can we as students in our communities do better with collaborating with other communities, especially those in developing countries or island nations? And how do you feel like we as individuals can potentially make a difference in amplifying the voices of those that are going to be most affected by the climate crisis?
I guess I'll start and I'll leave Amy the international angle. But I think at the local level for us, where we see the role of students is one, being informed about what's already happening, number one. But number two, also helping us pass the mic. Oftentimes in the climate movement, it's the same voices and the same talking heads. And I think that, having the youth and those that are around you, whether that be your family or your own, neighborhood level, and saying like, hey, this person has a story to tell, and challenging us to listen and to, really understand, that small scale problem is a role that I see youth leaders, and then just, constantly challenging us, but also trying to understand that sometimes change is very hard in government.
Thanks very much. So I think, kind of building on what Karina said, I think being informed, number one, I think is key, and making sure you're aware of the issues, but also, just aware of the different kind of NGOs and groups that are out there that do help the kind of developing world that you can be part of, you can volunteer for. I mean, I definitely remember at university always looking for those kind of extracurricular activities and things to do during the summer that that were meaningful outside of where I was living. So that would be kind of one aspect. And then if you, it kind of leads from the other question on what you can be doing to be more sustainable and increasing that, is if you are informed on the subject, is just, kind of spreading that information, not just within your kind of youth groups, but, with other people outside of universities, with your kind of parents and family, and making to try and get them to change and see that point of view as well. I think through social media has really enabled, I think, that kind of connectivity with so many different communities, that it's such a good tool a tool and device to spreading the kind of hopefully correct information and letting people know things that they can do. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, both of you. I think that's all the time we've got for questions. But if you have any more, just pop them in the chat and we can always take them and they can be answered on our website. So to kind of wrap up a bit more, so now what? So we want to kind of keep up the progress and keep up the push for change, and also keep hearing inspiring stories. So please make sure you check out our website and follow us on social media. I'll pop the links into the chat now, because it's really important that we hear your ideas and share different projects. So if you know of any projects or ideas going on around you, or anything that you're interested in, please share with us, because it's important to keep this momentum going, and keep up this push. So yes, please share. I've popped the links into the chat, and please have a look at those. So now I'll just hand over for kind of the few final words, but thank you all so much for coming, and it was great to see you all.
Luna, do you?
Yes, sorry, I wasn't sure when to chime in, but yes. Hi, everyone. I'm just here to give the last words of thank you to all the speakers, and also all the professors as well for working together with the students on this project. You can see all the names of the professors who collaborated together, joining our meetings and giving in their opinions as well to bring in what we delivered today. So thank you, everyone. And also for students, if you are wanting to stick around, want to have more discussions, and to view a video of poems created by climate scientists, students and health professionals, you are more than welcome to stick around as well. And yep, I think that's it from me.
Thank you all. And then we didn't get to some questions, so I see some in the chat. Any of our panelists would like to just finish? Veda, I know you're still here. And I know some of our other panelists, some final words. And I see you put also how we can connect with you. I see some, and
yeah, I just wanted to say thanks again, everybody. It's been a pleasure, and that, yeah, I can't emphasize enough how much collaboration and building teams of people who really get it is in this work. Not only so we don't get overwhelmed, but so that we can be more effective. I've learned a lot being here as well, so I really appreciate that. And yeah, I just want to keep encouraging everyone to continue to think about others in this movement too, and how we can help amplify and support others who are also on the front line to climate action and climate change. Thank you.
And we're just going to close out with a video we started with. If you did not get a chance to see it previously, please stick around. It is a beautiful video created by some students and scientists from Exeter. And I am going to load it up right now so that everyone can get a chance to see it. And thank you all for coming. We are extremely happy that you have been able to spend this time with us. Oh, and let me make sure you can hear it.
This collection of poems is a powerful wake-up call, a catalyst, a call to arms. The science alone is not getting the message across. Our leaders do not hear us. We bury our heads in the sand of the expanding desert. The group of leading climate scientists and medical academics represented here have turned to humanities and the arts for help. They have composed poetry that gives life to the climate catastrophe we are in and to which we contribute. There are poems that celebrate our natural world and poems that give glimmers of hope. Please enjoy these poems, but more importantly, act now and make a change. This is our responsibility.
One Drop, read by Amelia Treble.
We scan the sagging sky, the curdled clouds, heavy and sodden as sandbags that no longer stem the tide. Hunching homeward against the storm, faces stung. We feared the urgent rain would never stop, and longed for sun. Now in rinsed air, this one bewitching moment, a single raindrop, a sphere of light and dark, sky and shadow, suspended on a summer leaf, fragile as a planet.
Sudden Heat, read by Amelia Treble.
Cool, clear water still gushes from the tap I wash hot, dry hands wondering how long I'll wake to green fields. The fairies of childhood bleach among bluebells as in my homeland 10,000 miles away. Beyond the window, trees gasp as I breathe in. Ground bakes, my body and blood drawn towards the arteries of the earth.
"71% Water", read by Amelia Treble.
This sea, these wrasse, that oarweed, this granite, mussels, a crab, sand and salt, this floating heaven. A starfish feeds, filters, feels its way. Almost naked, I propel forward at one, at peace, in this vast soup, this liquid being.
Once There Were Fish, read by Hugo Tagholm, Chief Executive of Surfers Against Sewage.
Boats lie tethered on parched earth, hulls swollen, paint peeling, like the blistered skins of fishermen on the run across a sudden desert, who have no choice but to pray for rain, scavenge a changed landscape, and dream they'll find at least a trickle of a stream or underground source that leads to a clean river flowing with more fish than plastic.
In Our Hands, read by Amelia Treble.
Decades ago we played in sunlight, rolled glass across concrete, didn't worry if it cracked. From space the earth appears a marble so small it can be blotted out by a man holding up a thumb. It's an orb absorbing dense fires, footprints in garbage-filled oceans. The ozone's a shawl gnawed by maggots, believing they can live on Mars.
The Mice Know, read by Cassidy Kramer. youth activist from Alaska.
We'll miss humpback whales, murmuration swirling against Arctic sky, black swans swimming, and seaside piers. Waves that lap at a boat's hull, the crackle of barrier reefs, the Dead Sea. We'll remember traveling across the globe, driving fast cars, shopping till we dropped. We'll long for medicines that once saved lives. We'll grieve for the tap of a wasp on glass. Cut grass, leaves, snails, stillness, breaths we took without inhalers. The Gulf Stream, rodents hiding in burrows, creatures who smelt CO2 rising while humans couldn't.
Planting Ghosts, read by Floella Benjamin, former Chancellor of the University of Exeter.
In the gutter and choke, the gutters and poke, a plan is alive. To bring back hives in the city. Flowers will splurge in the hedge and the verge. They will blaze. But the earth is depleted. The plant roots defeated. We are phased. The planet is frying. Species are dying as fast as we act. The beechwood was needed, built on and weeded. The odds are stacked against. But here come the bees. They hum all around, flying intrepid to where the ghost orchids were found.
One chance left.
Axed, read by Sonia Tabakovic.
It's early and we're strolling in lush greenery where crickets tick and bright parrots chat. Paradise sings as crystal mist drips promise of fresh growth. When a growling sound fills the forest, we freeze, wait for the beast to strike. Metallic teeth crunch through the new life. We choke on sawdust, dead wood smoke clings to skin. In this desolate path from where we scream, "Stop!" there is no hiding place.
How to Pierce a Heart, read by Wenying Zhu, youth activist from China.
It is her birthday. She's watching people buzz about tents, find food to cook, try to wash and hang laundry. Some children stay close to the campfire. Apart, she tucks a necklace of shells. Nana collected them as currency before the rolling swept every crevice. The waves took homes and hopes, swallowed them, spat out drags, Nana and Dada hurricane scum. She and Mama were held, protected by palm trees. But there is no climbing here. Clouds darken, and empty shells no longer lift her heart. She wishes to be in heaven.
In Remembrance, An Island, an Allotment, read by Sonia Tabakovic.
An allotment. We found a rusted spade, left-handed glove, netting tangled beneath blossom, soil-encrusted spectacles offered up by a self-seeded cleavers, poppy, horsetail, willow herb, dock and nettles, alongside strung bamboo, aqua dulce from damp pockets, pods growing in the shadow of brambles. In mud, a man toppled, was forgotten, overtaken by weeds. An island, Tuvalu. The sea's rising, land's disappearing. I'm in a race to pack memories. The fatele dance moves, the vivid colours of my Sulu, a canoe, church bells, the manepa where villagers met. Separated, I make a new house among among bigger roads, cars, and building. Hope, love for one another survives.